Earlier on we mentioned homophobic bullying and gender stereotyping in the same sentence. To what extent, or do you think that gender stereotyping and work around that issue supports the work on homophobic bullying?
Yeah, well, I think they're inseparable, really. I think if you've got gender assumptions and gender stereotypes, they're kind of key components of tackling homophobia and homophobic bullying. So, as such, I think it's paramount that as part of this work, gender norms are challenged. So with some schools looking at this idea of boys things and girls things can be an important starting point and start to trouble that idea, and perhaps traditional gender stereotypes and gender roles more broadly.
It's interesting because I think some people find that quite threatening and immediately think that you're going to be dressing up boys in dresses and you know, there's a lot of misconceptions around that, when really what it's about is about providing opportunities for children to just explore their identity and dress up and role play.
Yeah, and I think what seems to stand out so far with doing the work around gender roles and gender norms and stereotypes is that children actually seem to be doing a range of hobbies and activities that maybe cross both of those boundaries anyway. So it's not so much dressing up children, but just getting them to acknowledge how what they do anyway might be considered to be straddling that boundary of boys things and girl things anyway, and just to celebrate that and just to have that confidence in yourself that what you're doing is perfectly fine, and for other children in the class as well to to acknowledge that what classmates' interests are very broad and wide ranging and might straddle the boys and the girls things, but I mean, in many instances as well, they tend to challenge that idea as well, that there could be boys things and girl things. So this is when it really starts to move it to a more deeper level, and you start to trouble those ideas that there could be boys things and girls things, and not just things, which is something that kids constantly say back to me.
Yeah, it's funny actually. The work that we've done here and the lessons I've observed, it's exactly what the children come out of it going, isn't it ridiculous that things are for boys or for girls? And they can see that themselves. They say things should just be things, and if you like them, you like them, which I think is a really powerful journey for them to go on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you've obviously seen a lot of really interesting work and lessons. Are there any sort of memorable things that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think a lesson that stands out was one involving a Year 3 class that had used the book Prince Cinders, and that was part of their topic week. And I think it stood out because at the end of the story there's the lived happily ever after ending, and that was used as a basis to discuss whether as part of a happily ever after ending you have to get married, which was an initial good starting point to have a discussion, and then that seemed to naturally progress on to a discussion of civil partnerships. So I think why that lesson stood out is just because it was very matter of fact, and it kind of showed how these ideas can just be incorporated into lessons that can happen on a daily basis, and just to use something like the lived happily ever after ending to discuss different kinds of endings and to discuss things like marriage, whether you always have to get married, and then to discuss when people do get married that there is also a range of different types of marriage.
So we're almost sort of bringing in our philosophy for children skills again, aren't we?
Yeah.
Which actually, from personal experience, I think underpin a lot of this work, and obviously develop deeper thinking. But also the sort of side effect of that is that again we're representing lots of children whose parents might not be married or might be single parent, or just from a range of different families. So that's
and I think that's important. I think this work relates to all different types of children. I think it can relate to children that have same-sex parents and they're in that type of family. It can relate to children whose friends have same-sex parents, and it's how they relate to that family when they go down their birthdays, and and it also relates to children whose friends might come out at a later stage, and it's how this relates to those friends at that later point, and how they can maybe understand that friend a bit more. And it also relates to children that have family members, aunties or uncles that come out as gay as well.
Yeah.
So really, it's not just about children that might. It's not just about children that might be gay when they grow older. It's about children who can relate to all kinds of people. And it might be that this happens at a very late stage when it comes to the workplace and how you interact with people in the workplace, or it could be at an earlier stage, like I say, with children that are in same-sex families, or children that have friends that are in same-sex families, or children whose auntie or uncles. Again, it's just about understanding and being able to relate to those people.
So really it's about all children, isn't it? And this potentially impacts upon all children in school, outside of school, and in their lives furthermore. So it's...
Yeah, I think certainly. I think there might be that conception that this work just relates to a small amount of children, but really relates to all children based on what I've just said there.
Yeah.
But I think also with the gender stereotypes work as well, that has a lot of that's a lot of purchase as well for kids that want to follow some interest in it could be girls playing football, it could be boys doing ballet, but just something that's traditionally been associated with the opposite gender, and can get stigma for that as well. So I think it relates to everybody, and I think that's probably one of the most important things. It's not just for a small section of children. Everybody benefits from it, from discussing these ideas and through understanding.
Great. Earlier on, we had a brief chat around the role of governors and the sort of perceptions of governors, and I know that you've spoken to a few parent governors in this school and other schools. Yeah. What kind of feeling have you been getting for them? Maybe around perhaps some of the potential objections to the work.
Yeah, I think parent governors especially have talked about schools often supporting the work they do at home anyway, so they've been quite pleased that the values they have at home have been supported and being complemented by the school and the work that it's doing as well. Where this work might be seen to conflict with parents' views at home, I think talking about it in terms of something like an anti-bullying framework can often be quite effective, given that all the major religions have signed up to not to discriminate and not to bully. So I think certainly where there might be a potential objection to the work, dealing with it through a bullying framework, there doesn't tend to be many people that disagree with people being discriminated against. So I think on that level, people can engage with it and can relate to it, can understand what it's about if it's on a bullying level. But then in other instances, it seems to be supporting work that parents do at home anyway, and they seem to be pleased that the school is complementing what they do anyway and sustaining those values.
I think again that's one of the misconceptions around this work, is that if we're dealing with parents or children or school staff of faith, that somehow they're being required to change their view, which of course isn't the case. It's around all of us respecting and accepting one another and understanding one another's beliefs and backgrounds and cultures, and then providing a school community in which we can all coexist and flourish without prejudice and discrimination, and without challenging anybody's religious beliefs, which is just not the case.
And I think when it is done on a level of anti-bullying, like I say, that it's not something that people tend to object to, because all the major religions have signed up to that agreement that it is wrong to bully people and to discriminate against people. So it's not necessarily changing beliefs, it's just basically looking at how we can respect other people, and that's something that everyone can buy into and everybody can relate to.
Absolutely. So overall, bearing in mind everything we've talked about and everything you've seen so far in your journey, what do you think the impact of this kind of work could be or is?
Yeah, I think the immediate impact is encouraging children to be more open-minded, and I think there's certainly an acknowledgement, appreciation and celebration of difference as well, and they're starting to acknowledge how we're all different in different ways, and that's something to be celebrated, and diversity is important. I think as well it tends to, it also seems to provide a stimulus for more critical thinking as well. So in some of the focus groups I've run with the children, they've taken some ideas introduced in the lessons, and they've started to think about things at a deeper level, so things like gender norms and gender assumptions. So it can often provide the basis for more critical thinking, which I think is quite unique as well.
Excellent. Well, Joe, thanks very much for your time today, and good luck with your work.
Yeah, thank you.